Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. Thank you for joining Hyperproof for this webinar on how to use NIST SP 853 to protect your information systems and resist attacks. I'm really excited to talk with Dr. Kenneth Cooper today. He is I really think you guys are going to enjoy this conversation. He's a true expert in protecting information systems and compliance frameworks such as NIST SP 853. So I hope that you will take away at least 3 valuable action items from this call. We really do want to make time for your questions. We want to engage with you. So anytime during the conversation, when you have questions, please enter them into the chat, and we will have time at the end for live Q&A. One additional thing to keep in mind is this is being recorded, so you will be able to refer to this again with the same link you used to register for the webinar. With that, wanted to introduce you guys to Dr. Kenneth Cooper just a little bit more. So Dr. Kenneth Cooper, he is the CTO and co-founder of Data Point Solutions Consulting. This is a veteran, minority-owned company focused on helping organizations meet their information technology, cybersecurity, and compliance goals. Dr. Cooper has designed and implemented networking and data protection solutions, performed risk assessments, and created architectural design solutions for many state and federal government communications and networking systems. He's also designed and implemented policy guidance, governance, and info systems protection and management for enterprise companies, SMB companies, the Department of Defense, state and city governments. Hi, Dr. Cooper. Is there anything else you want to say about yourself to introduce you to the audience?
Hey, JC. No, I think you covered most of the basics there. I mean, the only other thing is I just do different things in university systems. You know, I do evaluations for accreditations for information technology and computer science and engineering programs on top of some of those other industry things that I do as well too. But outside of that, you covered it all. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And I'll introduce myself quickly. I'm JC Zhao, and I'm the Director of Content Marketing for Hyperproof. And Hyperproof, really quickly, is a compliance software company based in Seattle. And our mission is to basically help security and compliance professionals alleviate the burden around compliance work, around audits. We want to kind of help organizations implement the frameworks they need to keep themselves protected and have a way to manage their audits and ongoing compliance efforts a lot more efficiently than if they were doing it manually with different ad hoc systems. So with that, wanted to quickly preview what we will be talking about today. We have kind of 4 general discussion topics, all around, most of which is around the framework here. So the first one is really just an overview of this particular framework and what makes it really relevant, especially now when most people are working remotely from their homes. The second piece are the key security control families within this framework that should be operational and implemented to make sure you are protecting your information resources, assets, systems, and networks. And then we will talk about what's new and changing in the latest version that is rolling out in a few months. And then lastly, we'll talk about when you're having to manage multiple frameworks, what can you do to be efficient and strategic? So with that, let's just jump right in. So for those who are not familiar with this particular framework, can you just provide us a really quick overview? Just highlight why should private sector organizations consider using this framework to manage their IT risk?
I think one of the great things about NIST SP 853 in general is that it is an excellent guideline for any organization, whether they're federal or private sector, that gives you a good solid framework, a good solid foundation, and literally a stepwise sort of approach to applying security controls across the board, right, for your organization. So it doesn't matter whether you're in the federal space or in the government space or not in the federal space or not in the government space. It still applies because it has great information that allows you to set yourself up for success. And then I know if you go back one slide to, one thing also is that if we want to kind of look at it from the approach of characteristics, right, as we have in the slide here, what NIST does, it gives you a foundation. That foundation then gives you a methodology, and then that methodology then gives you a very specific approach that you can literally create standard operating procedures, create specific implementation guidelines that you can literally kind of almost cookie cutter, right? You can take them up, lift them from one place, drop them down, place them in another place, whether it's a application security or infrastructure security or whatever type of security you're trying to do. And you can literally take the same thing that you apply over here for application or area A and still apply for application or area B. And there are a lot of overlap and a lot of different aspects as far as how you apply the security, how you protect your systems, how you protect access, how you protect your data, those types of things, that you'll see a lot of overlap that you can literally rinse, repeat, and do again, no matter where you are, no matter how you're trying to apply it, or no matter what type of organization or entity you are, from a cyber or a network or an application type space. And so in here, we talk about the control families, right? So on this slide, you notice we have the 5 different control families here. And what these 5 different control families reference, they reference what are commonly referred to as the cybersecurity framework. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the cybersecurity framework is basically a subset of all the hundreds of controls that you find inside of NIST. And they've dwindled them down to the 5 key areas that your organization wants to pay attention to from a protection or a control type of aspect. And that's your identify, your protect, detect, respond, recover, right? And what these 5 different areas will do, they basically give you an approach of how you want to apply security within your organization. You want to identify assets, resources. You want to protect those assets, resources with specific tools or applications or specific methods for monitoring. Then you want to detect. What you want to detect are any anomalies, any things that are outside of the ordinary, any potential malware issues or any potential systems that may be compromised. And then you want to respond. Respond is just how quickly can you identify an issue, remediate that issue, and then protect yourself so that that issue doesn't potentially happen again. And then the next thing is recover, which is exactly how it sounds. How do I now recover from either a breach that happened, or maybe a potential attack that happened, or a potential compromise that happened? And the great thing about the NIST cybersecurity framework is it allows you to go through all those key control categories to make sure that you're hitting all 5 of those areas. And if you're hitting all 5 of those areas, you can say that you are pretty well protected holistically within your overall environment. And that applies to cloud as well as your traditional kind of infrastructure environment as well.
That makes sense. Let's move on. So what do you think makes NIST 853 particularly relevant to organizations now, and when most workforces are remote because of COVID-19?
The good thing about it is that nowadays, right, we've done a shift, right, to where back in the day, pre-COVID-19, it's one of those remote workforce probably makes up anywhere from, in my estimation, 20% to maybe on the high end 40% of your average non-traditional company workforce. Nowadays, that paradigm is shift, right? To where now you're more like 60% on the low end and 80% on the high end now is all a remote force. So the good thing about NIST is that whether you are working remotely or not, but especially if you work remotely, it has actually specific guidelines within its 800 series that will help you set up the types of environment from an architecture perspective, from a connectivity perspective, that tells you what you should be doing to protect that access. So it helps you to be able to understand what do you need to do, what are the considerations that you need to take into place, and then how do I now apply it so that I can be better protected because this is not normal for us, kind of a thing, right? And so I think that's what makes it relevant now, is that it's one of the few guidelines that actually has very specific aspects within its overall approach to address a remote working force, in addition to the normal infrastructure and then the cloud and the cyber on top of that. So I think that's why NIST 853 nowadays is very relevant, because they've been doing this well before COVID, right? And so now that we've shifted into COVID, you have a guideline that has information that's going to help you today, as opposed to you having to figure out, okay, well, what do I do for this? Or what do I do for that? Or how do I handle my VPN? Or how do I handle, my authentication for my VPN? So it has all that information in there for you that you can read and fairly easily understand.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we talked about this in our prior conversations, right? Where because people's behaviors have shifted and they may be using different applications in their personal devices at home, there's a new set of vulnerabilities organizations have to manage and kind of redesign, like have controls for. So can you talk a little bit more about vulnerability management and the importance of it, and what does a good vulnerability management program look like?
So I would say vulnerability management is probably one of, if not the key component to ensuring that you are protecting your organizational resources. And when I say organizational resources, that basically translates to what's important to your company. Are you protecting data that's specifically stored on system servers in the cloud? Are you protecting specific people's information that's stored on system services or in the cloud? Do you need to protect certain levels of access? Whatever the case may be, kind of a thing, right? Vulnerability management is going to be key, because what you want to be able to do is identify some of those common vulnerabilities associated with, say, your overall system that you're using, your OS, or say common vulnerabilities associated with specific hardware components within certain computer systems. Say you're running a certain application like Office 365, it's the common one that a lot of people run nowadays, or you're using email clients or email relay servers and those types of things. So vulnerability management is going to become key, because you need to be able to identify critical vulnerabilities and be able to have access to resources that are going to tell you, how do I now patch or mitigate or get rid of these vulnerabilities? Because at the end of the day, with more people working from home, more personal computers being involved, more personal Wi-Fi's being involved, and more third-party applications, if you're not using a company laptop, you're introducing a new subset of vulnerabilities that would not normally be there in the office. And vulnerability management is going to be the key to identify, quickly categorize the ones that are the most critical, meaning the ones that are going to cause the most damage in the easiest way for a hacker, and then be able to identify what are the patches or what are the mitigation options for getting those vulnerabilities off my system, or at least if I can't get rid of them, then how do I reduce the damage that this vulnerability may cause by allowing access to my system, right? So vulnerability management is great. So in the long way to say, a good vulnerability management program involves two simple things: a set of tools or resources to quickly identify a vulnerability, and then having either automation or the right people in place that are monitoring those things on a daily basis as they occur, and applying a good patch management cycle to help mitigate those vulnerabilities. So if you have those two things in place, I think that would make up a good vulnerability management program. And then it kind of also leads into the question of the SIEM, right? The SIEM, the system incident monitoring type software solutions. How those help you is that they will allow you to create alerts. They will allow you to be able to identify exactly what's happening on your network and when. And these are going to help you identify what we call indicators of attack and indicators of compromise, right? And what those are is, if you have an active attack going, a great SIEM solution, because it's incident and event monitoring, right? Which means anytime something's happening on your system that indicates an attack, it's going to alert you and let you know. If someone has, say, gained access to your system, created, like, say, a fake user account, and then they did a bunch of manipulation either to your system or something, and then deleted that fake user account, and then tried to delete their trail to show that they weren't there, those are indicators of compromise. So a good SIEM solution that's monitoring that activity, who did what, when, where, how, those types of things are going to be part of your SIEM solution that's also part of a really good vulnerability management program. And I say really good because sometimes you may not have an all-encompassing SIEM solution, but you may have some sort of solution that's at least watching for specific endpoint vulnerabilities or watching for specific anomalies on your network. And that may just be an administrator that's just kind of checking some of those normal kind of scanning tools, those normal malware tools, and those types of things. But a SIEM solution will help enhance that good program and make it even better.
That makes sense. So NIST has pretty specific controls, right, designed to help you set up a good vulnerability management system. And so could you talk about the key 5 security control families that should be implemented to mitigate risks today, especially associated with remote work?
So the key 5 that I would say we will address, they will fall under one of those 5 categories of the cybersecurity framework. But you want to look at access control, right? You want to look at awareness training. You want to look at audit and accountability. You want to look at the control assessment, which is your authorization and monitoring. And you want to look at configuration management. In essence, you want to look at the areas that cover a few simple things, right? From an access control perspective, what you want to focus on: who has access to my system? When do they have access? What can they do with that access? And then what specific data or what specific controls do they have the ability to also give additional access to, right? So that's your kind of your AAA, right? Access, authorization, and accountability, right? Those are the 3 that we want to look at in that kind of access control category. Then your awareness and training, especially nowadays with more workforces being remote, you simply want to do a little bit more than your standard awareness training, because now you want to make sure that your employees who, say, are not used to working from home understand some of the nuance of working from home, meaning they may be on, like, their home Wi-Fi now, right? They want to make sure that they have passwords, things like that, that are a little bit stronger than normal. They don't want to be taking the company computer and getting on a public Wi-Fi at your local Starbucks or coffee shop or something like that. But those types of things, awareness training is going to cover. Your audit and accountability. All the audit and accountability will really do for you is that gives you your logs, where you got to monitor everything that's happened. That's your system logs, that's your security logs, and that's also your access logs, right? So that's all the 3 different levels of logs. And then accountability is that you want to make sure that you're actually taking these logs and looking at what people are doing, when they're logging on, how often are they logging on, because what you want to kind of look for in that is the automations and the bots, right? those different systems that are designed to kind of do brute force to try to find just unused administrator passwords, or those systems that are set up to have the default administrator like on a Windows system, or you're using the root login on a Unix, Linux type system, those types of things that you don't have appropriate password. So your audit and accountability will help you to be able to identify those things and quickly kind of mitigate some of those as well too. And then your control assessment, which is the CA area, which is your authorization and monitoring. All that's doing is that anytime someone has a privilege level account, you want to monitor when they're using those privileges and how they're using those privileges. Because what you don't want is if someone's privilege level account, say, gets compromised and they're logging on at times that are outside of their normal work time. So those types of things you want to be able to catch and identify. So your control assessment piece of those will help you with that kind of authorization and monitoring of who has, privileged accounts, who's given privileged accounts, et cetera, and those types of things, right? And then finally, configuration management. Configuration management, I think, is one of the highest areas that are overlooked when it comes to your kind of basic security. And what I mean by that is, I have a remote workforce now. They are now 80% of my company. I don't have the resources to give everybody in that remote force, say, a company laptop. So I have to give it only to, say, my key personnel. So how do I configure that laptop? If I configure that laptop very loosely, very willy-nilly, meaning they can have local admin and install things on that laptop, I'm now introducing potential vulnerabilities into my system, right? So what I want to do from a configuration management, I want to have baselines, right? I want to have baseline configurations that says whether it's your personal laptop or if it's a company laptop, we're going to put either an image or we're going to put specific lockdowns on your login account, via a GPO or however you want to do it, that says you can't do more with your account than you can do with your account, whether you're at work or at home. And configuration management has got to play a large part of that. And I think configuration management and access control tie into one another the closest. And then a good third would be your control assessment for your authorization and monitoring. And then will come your audit and accountability, and then awareness and training in that order as far as a most important to least important. And some people would argue awareness and training would probably should hold a higher level of importance. And I think that's great. But at the end of the day, if I'm not in my office and I'm not monitoring or putting a little, tracker or ticker that says that they're actually taking or paying attention to that awareness training, the best way for me to make sure that they can't do something they're not supposed to do is apply the other controls. That way, if they don't even listen to the awareness training, I know they can't do something crazy because I've set my system up to make sure they can't. That make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That was really well said. You have to have mitigating controls too if the primary ones aren't working. So, right, yeah. So, NIST, it's really a really comprehensive guidelines, very prescriptive for organizations. That's great. But then organizations, they often, especially if they're at any kind of scale, have to adhere to other frameworks as well, like SOC 2 and ISO 27001, because their customers trust those frameworks and they're asking for it. So they have a lot of work to do to comply to multiple frameworks, and they're getting audited every year. So do you have any advice on how a security and compliance team can just do this kind of work efficiently?
My best advice would be to take the core or /key/critical components from your overarching frameworks, right? That would be your NIST and your ISO. And the reason I say NIST and ISO because NIST is US-based, ISO is international standard for those that don't understand the differentiation between the two. But at the end of the day, they're both roughly the same document, just applied on a different scale, right? One's national, the other is global. And then, so when you have like your SOC 2, CIS, CSA, CMMM, which is your, Cloud Security Alliance stuff, your control management framework. All those other frameworks all have controls that ironically pull directly from NIST and ISO. So it's one of those things to where if you set your framework at the overarching high level and then have a mapping that tells you what some of these sub-frameworks or some of the additional compliance frameworks are, what you can do is you can do your cross-mapping. And there are several cross-mapping tools out there. One of them is the security control framework cross-map that's out there. It's a really decent one. The CIS organization, they have, which is run by SANS, or they used to be run by SANS. I can't remember if they're still SANS or not, but they have a cross-mapping framework that's out there. And the easiest thing to do is understand where your key problem areas cross-map from the hierarching documentations like NIST and ISO, and fit those to see where they fit into some of the sub ones like your SOC and SOC 2, because those are usually some of the bigger ones, right? And then some of those other ones like your PCI, your HIPAA, et cetera. And then see where those all kind of overlap. And what you do is focus on the overlapping areas first, because if you focus on the overlapping areas first, that's probably going to cover anywhere from about 65 to 85% of your overall controls of those other non-NIST, non-ISO compliance type items. And then once you've got those down, you got those solid and you're good with those, then go back and hit the other areas is the way I would approach it. Because if you try approaching it from, let's just do NIST, or let's just do SOC 2, or let's just do ISO, and then try to go back, what happens is you may miss a specific nuance, say in evidence gathering, that would meet all three. So one is going to not be as precise, and the other one is going to be more precise. So NIST is going to be more generalized, right? ISO is going to be more specific, but more generalized on a global scale. SOC is going to be very specific, right, to your security operations center, right? CSA is going to be very specific, right, to your overall cloud infrastructure environment, those types of things, right? And CMM is the same way, right? It's going to be very specific for a very specific need. So if you start with just the core areas between them all, then branch out to those other ones, you'll hit those specific needs that will meet those generalized needs that will then meet your overarching needs regardless of which compliance framework you intend to apply or are required to comply with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And do you want to talk a little bit more about the CSI controls?
The CIS ones?
Mm-hmm.
So the good thing about CIS is that they do a very good job of helping you understand here is what you need to ensure that you are protecting your environment, as opposed to saying, here is what you need to do specific with these specific tools, with this specific company, et cetera, right? Because every company has different resources available to them. Every company has people that have different levels of expertise. And what CIS has done today is that they've shifted from this paradigm of, if some of you may remember the whole top 20, where they go, hey, if you do like the first 5 of the top 20, you got to cover 80% of your organization's security needs, and then they'll give you very generic information. So now what they've done is they say, you know what? We're still going to give you the top 20, which those are still out there. But what we're going to do now is say, we're going to look at the size of your organization now. So now if you want to be compliant, we're going to say, how big is your organization? What do you do within your organization? What type of resources are you protecting? And now we're going to give you different levels. And now you can apply it to those different levels based on that tier. And then they went one step further to say, hey, guess what? If you use NIST, if you use ISO, if you use SOC, some of the more commonly used ones in the cybersecurity and the security space, hey, here's how our controls fit to those controls. And now you can basically take their big map that they give you, actually you can get it directly from their website, and it breaks it out, and it actually gives you all of the breakdown of all the different ones as far as all their tier as well too. And I kind of liken CIS to NIST in the fact that it's very prescriptive. So they have a descriptive method. That's, your different levels depending on the size of your organization. Then it gives you the different control areas. And then they're very prescriptive in those control areas, saying you must apply access control, meaning you must control who has what level of access, what they have access to, and what they can do with that access. Here's this type of data. This type of data should be protected this type of way. This type of data should only be accessed, via these types of privilege levels, et cetera. So it gets very prescriptive. NIST and CIS, they do a really good job of that, giving you very prescriptive controls within their descriptive environments and giving you those key control groups or control areas or domains, depending upon which terminology you like to use. We like to refer to them as control domains. Some people like to refer to them as control requirements. It's all the same thing. You have a key category, and then you have subcategories that tell you what falls within those key categories.
Thank you. So in the same vein, right, we're talking about how to basically be effective and efficient with our work with limited resources. And this, I think, is particularly relevant now in a recession where organizations are tightening budgets and they don't necessarily have the budget to hire, somebody in-house to manage their security program. So for organizations that are more resource constrained, how can they maintain a strong security posture without incurring all the costs? What are some options to consider?
So I think there are several good options. One of them is outsourcing. Nowadays, you can find several companies, for instance, like my company that I run, DataPoint Security Solutions. We have virtual compliance options, where that means you can have a virtual compliance officer that can come in, for a short period of time, whether that's 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, what have you, and literally kind of help you get your compliance in order. We have a virtual CISO option. And so if you can't afford to have a CISO full-time kind of a thing in your organization, you can actually hire a virtual CISO and you get the benefit of a CISO. But what happens is the job of the virtual CISO will kind of go through your security posture from top to bottom and tell you specifically what areas are lacking, what areas need, are gray, and just kind of map it out for you and give you an overall programmatic solution to kind of putting things together. And then the other option that you have as well too is that shift to a more automated compliance or automated security posture, meaning there are several tools out there. For instance, Hyperproof, you guys offer a compliance tool. Now, it won't do the compliance for you, but the good thing about it is, right, it has different templates that the individuals can load that meet just about any compliance requirement. And you can all kind of like a cut and paste, point click, from a software perspective to say, here's what you need, upload your evidence is there, print out a report, and we're good to go. So from a budget constrained organization, those are the three options. And then I think one other option that you can look at as well too is that if you can afford it, let maybe one person on your, say, small group of people or team, let them just be focused on security. I know that's probably hard in a smaller office, but if you have someone that's just dedicated to security, you can sometimes have that person, they can get all the training, they can look up all the documentation, they can research all the tools, and then they can figure out what works best, within your different environment based on the budget that you have. But it's honestly, especially now in this pandemic, really easy to find outsourcing for those types of things at fairly low cost nowadays as well too. And, and just to put another plug, right, for my company, one thing that we like to do is that we don't do a one-size-fits-all type solution. So like if you come to us, we're not gonna be like, okay, 50,000, right off the bat for us to come in and look at everything. We work with companies, and what we try to do is design a solution that's specific and that's unique to that company based on the budget that they have and the needs that they have. If that's a short, quick visit or an identifier for you, we'll do that, and then maybe even hand it off if we need to, so your security folks, but with the plan, right? With the plan of action, with the map of how to go about putting those things in place. So I think those are some pretty good options out there as well too, from a budget perspective.
Mm-hmm. Again, this is a related question to budget, right? Is that you need certain types of tools to enable you to accomplish what you want from a security standpoint. But there's tons of different tools. The market is really large and it's growing. So can you give people some guidance on what are specific categories of tools that organizations really need to have in order to maintain a baseline of security?
Right. So you definitely want to have a baseline. What that means is you basically want to have a posture that tells, here's what minimum security looks like for the types of systems and services that we offer. And then what you want to do is tweak those as needed. So for instance, you want to have a really good SIEM solution. That's your security incident event monitoring, as we mentioned before. Because a SIEM solution, if you get a good one, like for instance, SolarWinds is one that I'm very familiar with. There are several others that are out there as well too. Splunk Enterprise has one that's out there as well too. That's a very good tool. What these tools do for you is that they look at your entire environment and they tell you exactly what's going on in near real time within your entire environment. The reason I say near real time is because if you have some systems that are very geographically separated, you may have some time delays as far as when the information is fed. But after about, anywhere from a week to max of about 30 days, you could have a no kidding snapshot of exactly what's going on within your environment at any given point in time. Not all SIEM solutions include logging and monitoring solutions, but you definitely want to ensure that you have logging. And logging is going to be very important for audit purposes, because a lot of times if you're not a 24/7 shop or you don't have 24/7 someone's kind of actively looking at your network, what you want to do is have a very specific, regular interval in which you're reviewing all those SIEM solution logs, right? All those data logs that you're getting, all of the system logs, all the security logs, because you can feed those to a lot of these SIEM solutions nowadays as well. So what they will do is give you an analysis. They will tell you that, there's some anomalous, analogous information going on your network at like midnight, every night or something like that. And what happens is you can now be able to say, okay, oh, that's like, employee, so-and-so, they like to work, late at night kind of a thing. And your monitoring tools can help you to be able to identify what's truly anomaly, what's truly analogous information that's going on, and what's legitimate information that's going on. And then they feed that to like a pretty dashboard with colors and graphs and all this stuff where anybody can easily look at it and see what's going on, because it does this really cool thing called color code. And everybody knows the bad color is red. The next to bad color is yellow, the good color is green, right? And you can adjust those, but anytime you see anything that looks red, that's bad, right? And now you can focus your area on that. Or if you got a little graph and every day your graph is a steady kind of like heartbeat symbol, and all of a sudden you see a giant spike, and a giant jump here and there, then what do you focus on? Wherever those spikes and those jumps are, right? So the good thing about having a good SIEM solution, a good logging and monitoring solution, is that once it creates this kind of baseline of what's normal within your network, what's normal activity within your environment, you can easily identify what's now not normal, and then you can adjust accordingly to if that's something I need to fix, or if that's just normal for, say, a specific employee or a specific subset of employees. So I think that's a really, really good way is to have those types of tools. And as part of those SIEM and logging tools, the one thing that I don't think I mentioned is you definitely want to have something that is managing endpoint vulnerabilities, right? Because that's, especially nowadays, those endpoint vulnerabilities are going to be very important to make sure that you're not introducing vulnerabilities into your network via authorized systems, because someone has an authorized system and they have an authorized account, but they've installed, say, potentially unauthorized or potentially vulnerable software on that system, kind of a thing, right? Applications that they're using. So your endpoint tools are going to be really, really good at that too. I know like ProtectWise has some really good for endpoint. Insight VM by Rapid7, Tenable has some really great overall, monitoring solutions. So there are a lot of different companies that have a lot of different tools, and I'm not necessarily touting any specific company's tool over anyone else's outside of HyperProofs and DataPoint, because I'm allowed to do that. But those other companies, they're not paying me, but I do know personally, I have used several of them, and I can tell you some pros and cons of each of them, in the QA if the folks want to ask, and I can say specifically some pros and cons of each of the different systems. But I know a lot of those vendors, a lot of those guys that I don't want them to come back to me and say, Dr. Cooper, you talk bad about our stuff on your webinar and give me a hard time. So I won't badmouth anybody, but I will definitely give you pros and cons and let you make your own decisions.
That's great. Let's talk about, go back to NIST for a moment. This framework has been out for a while, but it's being revised this year. And that's the first time it's being revised in 7 years. And now the latest version is version 5. Could you highlight how the framework is changing in version 5, and what do the changes mean for protecting systems, resources, and assets?
Certainly. So that's correct. It has been a while since NIST had a version update. And a lot of the reason for that is the most recent NIST working group. We got together, got a little bit more input from some of those non-kind of DoD industries to figure out what the issue was, because a lot of non-DoD or non-federal government working or interacting companies, they found it very difficult to use and apply NIST 853. And the reason for that is that it's very, very prescriptive, meaning it gives you very specific ways that it wants you to do the specific things within the controls, like your access control, your how do you do authentication and those types of things. It was very specific before. So the biggest thing that it's doing right now is that it's shifted, right? So we as an organization within NIST, we've shifted the idea from you should do it this way exactly to this is what you should do. Here's some recommended ways that you should do it. But as long as you meet this specific requirement, we're not going to tell you specifically how to do it anymore. And one big one that a lot of people go back and forth on are passwords, right? That's always the biggest argument in any security environment in any company is a longer password better than a shorter password, and password complexity. Do we have to have 3 characters? Do we have to have uppercase? Do we have to have lowercase? Do we have to have all of that? Do we have to make them change it every 60 days, every 90 days, etc.? So what NIST basically said, now, and I'm paraphrasing here, what they basically said was, we don't care how long you make it, or how complex you make it, or how often you change it. What we care about is that you have a password. It's not a simple password that's easy to guess, and you have a frequency with which you change it, and that frequency is a regular frequency, and however long you decide to make it, be consistent. Does that make sense? So basically what we're saying is that instead of being very deliberate and very specific of telling you how you should do it, we're saying this is what you need to do. Here's a way that will ensure you meet a certain level of security. And here are your options. You decide which one works best for you within your environment, right? And so it's more of a focus, as I mentioned here, on what the security requirement is and what you need to do to meet the requirement, instead of telling you what specific tools or technology you should apply to meet the requirement. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's becoming more flexible and tailorable. Yeah.
And there's a guide, if anyone wants it, there's a guide on the NIST.org website. And what the guide does, it's a breakdown of a spreadsheet, and it tells you what changes are administrative, because some of them, they just change the control names, and what changes are more deliberate as far as the discussion, meaning the how and the why of it kind of a thing. So, but at the end of the day, there aren't many major changes to the specific requirements. It's just how those requirements are being applied.
That makes sense. We will head into Q&A in just a moment, everybody. So if you have any questions, please do put them into the Q&A box, and we would love to answer them, whoever is the best person to answer them. With that, like to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about what you guys do at DataPoint Technology Consulting.
Right. So DataPoint Technology Consulting Solutions is basically made up of two principal members, myself, Dr. Cooper, and my business partner, Dr. Stewart. And so what we did, we both come from I come from DoD government, as well as industry, as well as education. He comes from enterprise, as well as education as well too. And what we decided was that we wanted to get together and put a company out there that will meet the overall cybersecurity or technology solutions for any company of any size. And we do that by being very deliberate and very specific in how we develop solutions for your company. We focus on the core areas of cybersecurity, risk, governance, and compliance. And what that means is that we want to start in the area that's going to be the largest impact to the industry right now, which is the cyber, right? That's the shift from your kind of typical hardware-based solutions to more cloud environment virtualization and how you protect access and those types of things right now across that overall web application perimeter and into your traditional network environment. Then we look at risk, right? Risk is where what is the largest impact that could potentially be a threat to your company, either losing data, losing employee information, losing client information, et cetera, those types of things, right? So that's your risk analysis, risk assessment, risk impact, right? And then we look at governance. Governance is just simply, do you have the appropriate programs and policies in place to make sure that your people can go to documentation to be able to apply security appropriately and effectively, right? And then compliance. Compliance is kind of like a lot of what we've been talking about all day, where you have to meet compliance for PCI. You want to, payment card processing. You want to meet compliance for HIPAA. You deal with medical data, EPHI, et cetera. So what we decided to do was, instead of having, people only having the choices of like the big giant companies that are out there, which are great and they're amazing companies, but sometimes they go in and people can get sticker shock. If you're a small business or a small company, you can get sticker shock because they will come in and they say that we're going to do all these different things to make your environment great because, we're, so-and-so and we know what we're doing and trust us, we've been here forever, we got you covered, but it's going to cost you this amount of money minimum so that we can make sure that we're taking care of you. So what we do is say, we're not going to say there's a minimum cost, there's a maximum cost. We simply say, we have a cost that will fit your needs based on what you need. And that's kind of our focus, is that we have industry experts, people that have done it for every aspect of industry that you can just about think of. And we will come in and give you a very tailored solution that meets your needs, and we will work with you within your budget. But DataPoint Solutions Consulting, we're based out of Colorado. We also have one of my business partners, he lives in Florida, so we also operate in Florida as well too. And we have several partners that we also work with and deal with in different states. So for us, you get the benefit of having a company that's not set in one specific location where you have to fly people out to all the time. Most of the things we could probably do virtually, and if you're in a state where we have a business partner operating within that state, or one of our partners or one of our affiliate members are operating in that state. You may have someone locally there that can work with you as well too. But that's kind of what we do at the end of the day, is we want to make sure that we do cyber risk governance and compliance for organizations, and we offer those virtual CISO and those virtual compliance types of services as well too, because we don't think that we are better than anybody else. We just think that we will do a better job for you specifically, because our job is simply not to just make money or figure out how we can charge you more for extra stuff. Our job is to make sure that you get what you need the first time around, and that when we leave, regardless of whether we stay or come back, we're going to make sure that we leave you with the solution that you can do. So if you don't have the money to keep hiring us or keep hiring other people, we'll make sure that we leave you with the solution that your people can follow, that they can understand, that they can apply.
That makes sense. And a quick bit about Hyperproof. We were incorporated, we're a software company, and we were incorporated because our founder, he's done a lot of compliance efforts for previous companies like SOC 2, right? And had to, answer a lot of security questionnaires from, their customers, and, started to ask, well, this is really inefficient. Can I find better tools to manage, collecting all my evidence for the audits, to review my controls, and saw that there were just not really tools that made it especially efficient around collecting evidence necessary to complete the audits and pass the audits. And this problem, right, around basically documenting your security processes and policies, it gets even worse when you have to comply with multiple frameworks like HIPAA, NCMMC, and SOC 2, et cetera. So Hyperproof was really founded with this idea that we want to help organizations be a lot more efficient. We want to eliminate administrative work around collecting evidence, around reminding people to send you evidence, around sending files back and forth, and grow with you. So we work with organizations of all sizes, and we kind of allow people to start from anywhere, wherever they are, whether that is creating a new program or it is you have a framework already, you want to manage it there, you want to manage it better, and you want to grow it to the next program. We support both of those use cases, and we also allow you to have your compliance program managed here and collaborate with your auditor in the same tool, so you eliminate that back and forth as well. So happy to chat more if you want to see how this could support your compliance efforts. With that, let's see if there are any questions from the attendees on the line.
I didn't think there were. Most of the people I saw, they all know most of the stuff.
Yeah, sometimes there's just a bit of a lag from typing to the questions. Well, one more question for you then, Dr. Cooper. Where can people find you, and how can they stay in touch with you?
Certainly. So for me, you can reach me either on my LinkedIn page or on my company website, www.datapoint.us.com. Make sure you don't forget the .us, because there is a British company that's called DataPoint, and they are datapoint.com, and I've already been confused with them once already this year. So make sure you do that. And we also have the phone number listed out there as well as on the company website that rings to our business line, or those that know me, they can contact me directly through my personal cell or through my email, which is drkwc@datapoint.us.com as well. And since there are no questions, I'll add just one more plug just to kind of wrap things up. NIST, to a lot of people, can seem very overwhelming, especially 853, especially ISO, especially when you get to the 27001, 27002 series, which a lot of companies are looking for. But I want to tell folks that we can help you to understand that documentation, but also it's not as complex as you might think. The truth is, if you read too much into it, then you can kind of expect that it's asking you for much, much more than what it actually is. But at the end of the day, it's not as complex as you might think. It's a lot easier to handle as you might think. And if anyone is trying to get either NIST certified using the CSF framework, ISO certified 27001, 27002, or any of the other NIST frameworks, or any other compliance frameworks, I would encourage you or have any of your colleagues contact myself or contact JC over at Hyperproof. They can help you guys from the compliance. And you can even contact us, and we'll even help you folks as well too, to kind of get acclimated or get familiarized with the Hyperproof software as well too. But I think NIST 853 is a really, really great guideline. And the truth is, it's a really good foundational baseline for any other compliance or any other cybersecurity or technology framework that you are going to have to apply within your organization, because it overlaps with literally every single framework on the market. I can honestly say I do not think, and like I said, I don't know it all, but I know enough, that I do not think that there is a single framework on the market today that does not at least cross-map to a lot of the controls within the NIST or even the ISO framework. And I just want to throw that last little plug out there for the folks on the call.
Yeah, I think that's really important information in terms of how do you think about your roadmap for security and compliance. So thank you. And with that, really appreciate you on the call today. And I hope everyone here took away something valuable. Thank you, Dr. Cooper.
Thanks, JC. I appreciate your time today. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your days.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.